welcome to the show, Soundmason.
I
Um,
appreciate you having me.
yeah,
Excited to get into some stuff here.
yeah, no, very excited you being here. How do you want me to refer to you? Do you want me to refer to you as Soundmason? Do you want me to refer to you by your name? How do you prefer?
You can just call me Corey.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying that I don't think I've had actually any producers on here yet that don't have like some form of their actual name in their producer name. So I've never even had to like think about that as to like what I'm gonna call them.
Oh, okay.
So this is the first
All
time I
right.
have
All
to
right.
ask like,
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
you're stretching your boundaries a little bit. I like.
yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, welcome to everybody in the chat. If you have any questions, send them through. I'll pull them up on the screen, and we will see if Corey wants to answer them. I'm sure he will, as long as they're good questions. So Corey, for the people who might not know you, what are some of like the accomplishments that would highlight your resume in the music industry?
Okay. Good start. I'm a Grammy nominated gold record certified producer. Um, I've got also a double platinum certification in Italy, of all places. Um, Done records in countless countries, Japan, Slovakia. It was a good one. Um, and have been in music for about 20 years,
Okay.
professionally. I did do some DJing like before I got into production, kind of amateur-ish, like doing house parties and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So, credits that I've placed records. I've obviously done records with Lupe Fiasco. I've
Yeah.
done records with Uncle Murda, Lucky Seven, El Camino, two of the Griselda affiliates. Um, some more independent geared rappers like Critical Genre out of the Bay Area, Scotty D from LA, um, London Day from out in Seattle area. I know I'm forgetting some, but I've been at it for a while and connected with a lot of different people, a lot of different artists.
Yeah.
Uh, I was also in a production group for about 8 years, from about 2006 to 2014, called the Buchanans.
Oh, okay.
Um, so that was that was where the Lupe connection came from. I actually was working on with or in that group at that time. So yeah, I've been around the block a few times, and I've seen some things, and I've been around some people. So yeah, hope that was a long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's great. I love when people just get going and rattling off all the stuff that they've done because I mean, that's the stuff that's stuck with you, and it obviously has left a mark on you, an impression, and that's really cool. To hear all those things that you've done, all the people you've worked with. Makes me excited to get into this. So, real quick, I want to start before we get too into it. Just for the people who are listening, might want to know more like the technical side of stuff. What are some of like the main equipment stuff that you use, the DAW you use? Just a general overview of that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a bit of a gear nerd, so
Hmm.
I like these questions. So right now, right now I'm using. I mostly for creative, like if I'm doing beats and stuff, it's Ableton. Um,
Nice.
that's kind of a graduation from like I was doing everything in Pro Tools for a long time. Like before, when everyone was doing like a lot of hardware stuff, I just like tracking stuff out and like moving. I like the visual aspect of moving
Hmm.
things around. I think I could work faster that way.
Hmm.
So when I first got my hands on Ableton, it was like that, but it was geared towards like creating not only just beats, but like just loops and stuff, and then being able to like the DJ aspect of the scenes, and um, just made things so much more effective for me, like as far as that process. So I'm basically in the box now. Like I have had MPCs before. I love using them, but right now it's just Ableton. I do have like a ton of synthesizers and all these software synths. I got Omnisphere, obviously. I've got the Analog Lab 5 I just picked up a few months ago. Um, Serum. God, I just like rattle off a ton of them. I got Native Instruments stuff. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of a bad habit, but yeah. As far as software goes, I do have a couple of analog synths. I have an OB6 and the Behringer Model D, which is like if you want that like Moog bass sound for like $300, like you can't beat it. You could probably get one used for 200 now, but that one like Moog sound that especially in trap music, like if you want to get that real sound, like and you don't want to pay a lot of money for it, like that's the way to go for sure.
Mhm. Nice.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I if I'm gonna mix, like I'll mix in Logic. For some reason I like
Oh,
to
okay.
separate the two. But if I'm doing a mix project, I'll track it out in Logic and do that there. So
Interesting. Okay. All right. Where do you typically get your sounds from? I know you're talking about like synths and stuff and the instruments and all that, but do you have like a set group of people that you look to for maybe they're sending you sounds, or is there anyone in particular that you like to grab their packs whenever they drop, or
yeah, there's a few people that I gravitate to. I mean, if anyone out there doesn't know the Drum Broker, like definitely get familiar with them.
okay.
Um, Great platform for buying uh, sound packs and drum sounds. Um, Splice, I'll use some Splice stuff, but that's I feel like it's harder to make a unique sound with Splice. Like it's even though there's a lot of stuff on there, it is like more of the generic sounding stuff.
Okay.
So I would say like as far as sounds go, like I really like to tap into the Drum Broker. The Sample Lab also has some dope stuff. Um, but specifically like people who make loops. I mean, uh, what is it? It's well, I'll start with Beat Butcher. Like his drum kit sample packs are like they're just ridiculous. His ear for that specific like gritty boom bap lo-fi sound is it's hard to find that in a sound pack.
Hmm.
Um, so I really love his stuff. Also, his ear for break beats and loops is pretty phenomenal. So I definitely get a lot of his stuff. Um, Motif, the Rucker Collective, like their loop packs are they're a little a little bit they kind of fringe on the commercial sound. Like you kind of have to work a little bit to get them if you want a commercial sound. If you want more of a kind of trippier psychedelic vibe, like I love their stuff. Kind of blends the gap between hip hop and R&B.
Hmm.
Um, uh, what's the one I just started getting a bunch of it's Came One, but it's Hijo de Ramon.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
is a crazy library. I mean, it's somewhat new compared to some of the other ones.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, he a lot of his stuff is very analog, synthy sounding,
Okay.
and it seems like a lot of these guys really take their inspiration from like those like kind of obscure 60s and 70s records, like the ones
Hmm.
that like Alchemist likes to sample and that type of vibe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's there's probably more. I mean, there is more. I have a whole folder of things I tap into, like
Yeah.
drum kits wise, but just off the top of my head, that's what came out.
No, that's pretty impressive for just off the top of your head. That's super cool. I hadn't heard about a few of those, so yeah. I'll have to check those out. How did it start? Like, where did your name Soundmason come from? How did you even get into producing at all?
It's a great question. I think it was kind of a progression of I've always been into music. I played trombone like growing up as a kid, but that was more of a during the school day type of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was more into sports in high school and um always like always was a huge music fan, like listening. Like
Yeah.
I had the first cassette tape I ever bought from like 1987.
Wow.
Yeah, it was called Hot Rap. It had like a collection. It was basically like a collection tape of
Mm,
like Run DMC, Stetsasonic, Eric B and Rakim.
mm,
Um, I mean, all like the '80s rap music was on, like the best of the best. Salt and Pepper. It was like Ultramatic MCs. Like this is how I like heard of all this stuff, and I'm basically 7 years old at the time listening to this. Like, whoa, you know,
yeah.
it just kind of, you know, the music fan in me really started then.
Mm,
And I think over time, like I just really wanted to create it. Like I wanted to get into the creative process, and I think DJing was kind of the gateway of
mm,
like buying vinyl and then learning that like there's so much accessible at the time. There was so much accessible on vinyl, especially in hip hop, that you couldn't get on CD or on a tape.
yeah.
You get like singles and B sides and white labels, and you know the idea of like mixing acapellas with other beats, and like that kind of like was the budding of the producer in me, I think. And then eventually, um, I just started thinking about making beats,
Mm,
and I think I think like not being into sports and having that like that outlet, or wanting to have that outlet somewhere else, like the competitive nature of hip hop, like that all kind of fit together. And I got into beat making, and it was just kind of like a, you know, I took it seriously, but I realized I had a lot to learn. But I also had like a very strong ambition to want to take it somewhere.
mm,
So I was always driven from the start. Like once I got my first keyboard, which was a Korg Triton, back in like, geez, it must have been 2002.
wow.
Like, you know, just like making, you know, everything was in the box, like on the board. Like it had a sequencer, it had a mixer on it, it had like pretty much every sound you could imagine, and a sampler. So it was like learning the ropes of like sampling drums and like mixing on a keyboard, and you know, then slowly incorporating a DAW. At the time, it was like, I think it was called Sonar, and then multi-tracking and like getting acapellas from records and then making my own beats to it, or um like some kind of edit to a beat that already existed that I did something to or whatever.
Mm,
That's where the production kind of got into full swing.
nice. And
And
the Triton was the one that's the one the Neptunes used a lot, right?
yeah, the Neptunes.
Okay.
If you go on YouTube and look for like Neptune's Triton videos, like someone will play through like, God, I mean, there must be 20 to 30 sounds off like number one hits they got off that keyboard. Like they made it sing.
Yeah.
And at the time, like it was one of the bigger boards out there. There were others that people were using. Um, but I know like other, you know, like if you look at I'm pretty sure in like the Timberland video where he plays "Dirt Off Your Shoulder" to Jay-Z in the Fade to Black documentary, that's a Triton. I'm pretty
Mm,
sure. So it's, you know, it's a pretty historic keyboard, but at the time, like it was just like it was what was hot,
yeah.
and it did everything. And um, you know, I think it was a great jump off point for sure. But
Nice.
I say this, like I never loved the drums on it, and I didn't realize that until I was always like struggling to get the drums. And I think at some point, like someone hit me to an MPC, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm missing. And once I combined the two, like my sound kind of jumped to another level.
Okay. Nice.
So
And
that kind of
then
like, that was, you know, I was gonna say that was kind of the the beginning of the jump off of everything. The Soundmason like name comes in later. Like that's probably 4 or 5 years ago where I, you know, went through you know, when I came out of the group, the Buchanans, it was like I gotta find my own identity. And you know, obviously a name has a lot to do with that and what it represents. So
yeah.
just thinking about like, you know, my approach, I think Soundmason kind of fit.
Hmm.
So that was the origin of it. Like nothing crazy. It was just like going through a bunch of ideas and being like, I really like this, and then asking people like, what do you think, and that type of thing.
Okay, so you didn't have that when you were in the Buchanans then.
The name.
The name, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it was
Oh,
yeah, so this is 15 or 16 when I kind of rebranded myself. Um the Buchanans, the way it was like the way it was broken up, it was like everyone had the last name Buchanan. It was like a family type of vibe. So like
hmm,
everyone in the group, I think there was five of us when I was in it. Everyone was like, it was like Corey Buchanan, et cetera, et cetera. And that was how like the group was branded, I guess you could say. It was like first name and then Buchanan as the end.
okay,
So
right on.
if you look at the Lupe credits for All Black Everything, you'll see it was co-produced by Corey Buchanan.
Okay.
That's where that all comes from.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so well, all right. I have questions about that, but I want to I want to get
Yeah, yeah,
back
yeah.
to when you were starting out because you said that you're from I know you're from New Jersey originally, but you mainly grew up in Woodstock. Um, and Woodstock's pretty tiny, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know what the population here is, but um, it's a small town for sure. It just has a iconic ring to it because of the festival.
Mm-hmm.
And then even before the festival in like the early 60s, like Bob Dylan was coming up here and Hendrix was up here and Joni Mitchell and Albert Grossman and like so the music industry connection to Woodstock goes back, into the 60s. So even though it's a small town, it has a big ring to it. Like it
Yeah,
rings, when I was meeting, and even Bearsville, the Bearsville studio here, what used to be the Bearsville studio was very famous as well. So when I was in Jersey and I go in the city and I was talking to people or meeting people and in the conversation, I tell them where I was from and they're like, oh, Woodstock. Okay. Like, a lot of people had been up here. There were venues in town that I've met people that traveled like 3.5 hours on a weeknight to go to a show up here.
yeah,
Uh, and it was cool because it was one of those venues where, they would have flyers and advertise, but there were random nights where um, someone was in town, they would just do like a spot show. Like I've heard
mhm,
stories. I didn't catch any of those, but I've heard stories of like I'm pretty sure like Bon Jovi did like a set at some like I mean the bar might hold 100 people. And this was like in the 80s when they were huge and they were just up here and last
yeah.
minute like yeah we'll do something, we'll rock out there. So a lot of
Wow.
that stuff goes on here. So it's cool. You get like that mix of uh, branding, right? Woodstock has a brand, and you have those people coming up here recording, and um, but you wouldn't know it unless you knew it. Like if you were to just take a drive out here and not know like the history of the town, you just see a lot of trees and open fields and an occasional house in a small little town. It's not like it shows itself to you. You know what I mean? Like you kind of have to know what
Yeah.
goes on.
Yeah. Well, so all of these people that you're saying, I mean, yeah, they're all huge names, but obviously, I think the glaring thing is that they're not a lot of them are not in like the hip hop scene. What did it feel like being in Woodstock and trying to get into the hip hop scene? Like, did it still feel like a musically connected town, or did it start to feel more like a little bit of a small town where you're like, I don't have anybody here? Like,
Right,
what was
right,
that
right.
like?
No, this is a great question. I'm glad you asked that because excuse me, I've had conversations with friends even now, like looking back on it, how um, hip hop was like there was an element up here. Um, like Nas recorded some stuff up here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm pretty sure. So Slick Rick, he had his last album was '98. Art of Storytelling, maybe. I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, but a couple of those records were done up here. Wu Tang had spent time up here, so like there was hip hop to a degree, and there was a scene up here. Um, but for me and the people that I knew in high school that were like real hip hop heads, like it was a tight knit group to a degree, and it was also like I always say like I felt like I didn't want to tell a lot of people, You know, it was like people like kind of like not mocked you, but it wasn't like it wasn't like you were in your own lane. Let's put it that way, and you weren't, you weren't you weren't the cool kids. Um,
Okay.
remember in the '90s, like that was grunge era
Mm.
more so than anything else, and like bands like Nirvana and Alice in Chains and um, Stone Temple Pilots and Pearl Jam, like that was the cool kid music back then.
Okay.
So, if I go to the store and buy Enter the 36 Chambers like on a whim because I like the cover, and I'm gonna probably tell three people I have that record, like
Mm-hmm.
it's not like everyone's talking about it in school. So it made for an interesting dynamic, because the people who listen to hip hop were essentially outcasts at that time up here. And
Wow.
that's something that changed, I think, as I got a little older, like into the late '90s, and like as I graduated high school, like there was more DJ events up here, like a hip hop night, call it, and it was run by one guy up here who did it for a few years. Now would show up and DJ like half a set or a set every Wednesday night. Um, but it was like it was still a pocket thing. It wasn't me like I said, you always felt like people would look at you like, "You listen to hip hop?" Like, it was never something it was like a
Yeah.
badge of, so I think in a way that made it more authentic because the people who listened to it and talked about it and like shared, like, yo, back then we were sharing tapes.
Mm-hmm.
One of my buddies would, he would hook me up with a tape, like one side was Pete Rock and CL Smooth, the other side was Illmatic. This is like 94 ish, maybe mid 94, like stuff like that. And we would just make tapes for each other and like talk about mixtapes. And there were a couple stores around here that would sell mixtapes from the city, so we would get the Clue mixtapes or Dirty Harry or
Mm-hmm.
um, all those city DJs that were playing remixes and stuff we hadn't heard yet. So there was a scene here for sure, and it was fun. But um, and like I said, I think it did like kind of give authenticity to it because you had to love it. Like you weren't just doing it to be cool, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So and because like there was an element of New York City up here and the connection, like I feel like it was true to its roots. Like this isn't like someone from uh I don't know, like some someone from Nebraska or North Dakota being like, "Yeah, I grew up around New York hip hop." Like you might have listened to it, but you didn't feel the energy that we all did because it was up here. And
Yeah.
we would go into the city and like go to record stores, and I'm going to Flatbush Mall on Sundays to go to Beat Street Records, and like a sea of people, with a backpack, and like that's an energy you feel like, and it's different than being somewhere else. So like being close enough to be able to go down there and go to lounges and clubs and see DJs, was also like part of that energy and that vibe that we all connected to.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. Well, so did you ever feel then like that you needed to like be in New York or move to New York, like or did you always kind of feel like you could still make it work in Woodstock? Because I'm assuming at this point in like music and just where the world was, the internet obviously was not what it is like right now. So I'm wondering like how you started to make those connections. If you're in Woodstock, like is it because you're going to the city or how did that work?
So this is interesting direction. So from '98 to about 2004, 97 to it was about 8 years. I lived in New Brunswick in New Jersey,
Oh, okay.
and that was closer to the city. That was about 40 minutes away.
Yeah.
I went to college down there, and then when I graduated, I stayed for a few years. And at that time, like it was more of a like the scene in that town like was way more underground.
Hmm.
Like they were like hardcore underground hip hop at the time. as far as the local scene went. And I never really connected with that. Like I always appreciated it, but I was more of like a alpha hip hop fan. Like, if you're gonna make a choice between company flow and EPMD, like I'm picking EPMD just because I like that energy more. But um, I think being in New Jersey helped because I was closer to the city and I could get in there more often.
Okay.
Um, and I had friends who knew people, and it was always like kind of a networking game, just asking people like, do know anyone who might be, at that time it was all label stuff. So it's, an A&R, do you know anyone who's working on any projects, that type of thing. And I was fortunate enough to find my first manager through a really good friend of mine.
Hmm.
Um, and I was thinking about this before we went on. I was like, I'm going to be extra particular about name dropping because I don't want it to be like I'm never a fan of name dropping. Like I always feel like it's kind of showy, and that's not really my personality.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't honestly don't think it matters, when it comes to like who does what.
Yeah.
Um, so I when I say my first manager, like she was an A plus lister. Like
Hmm.
wasn't just an A lister. She was, and I think this, she believed in me, and I was working with a songwriter at the time, and she believed in our sound and our determination. I think like she liked us maybe more than the music at first because we were still developing.
Yeah.
Um, but she was able to take us to meetings to, uh, you know, the president of um, Motown, like all the high, like Def Jam, Shady Records, like
Wow.
uh, all the like bigger hip hop labels at the time. She was able to get me meetings with like the president, like the number one executive. And so I had experiences sitting in meetings like where it's just me and her and this person, and like I'm one beat away from getting, a check for six figures. It was like that was the type of feeling it was, and great experience. So it was like going from being a DJ who did work in um, just like mixtapes and stuff like that to all of a sudden being in meetings like that. It was like 0 to 100. And it
Yeah.
was like, it was a lot to process. And I don't think production wise, like I was probably not, it was, there was more work that needed to be done.
Mm.
But a lot of times back then, you got to remember or recall like how things were in that mid early 2000 era. This is, brought the Neptunes before. Everything that had hip hop on it was selling like crazy. So record execs couldn't get enough, especially if there were like people that had like kind of a progressive or current sound, and like they liked the way you looked and they could market your visual. Like they were going to sign you because there was just so much money being made.
Hmm.
This is the 50 Cent 10 million record era, right?
Yeah.
So um, it was different back then. And her thinking was, I'm kind of spitballing a little bit, but her thinking was like, these guys have something and maybe it's not all the way ready yet, but we can speed that process up by getting them in bigger opportunities. And um, so it was a lot to learn fast on the fly, a lot of pressure. And then, it was like you're at 100 miles an hour and then you slow down to 5 and it's painful,
Hmm.
you know? So I feel like I don't want to like it doesn't necessarily tie back to me growing up in Woodstock or being in Woodstock. It was more of um, there was some good fortune there to have a connection, and I feel like that's where things took off for me. But I wouldn't say that that's a for someone who's in a small town. I wouldn't say that that's something that is discouraging at all. I mean, because if anything, that was just a lesson for me, but it wasn't the right path because it ended up not working out, and I had to move on and that type of thing. So I always like to say, like, I I always think about this idea. It's called the lady in the red dress as um, the trick of the matrix. It's like the name or the brand of someone, and like if you're a producer that's coming up and you think like a person is going to be the right fit for you to help you get to the next step because of
Mhm.
who they are, you're not thinking the right way. Like you want to get into a position to find the people that believe in you and are going to go to bat for you 100%. And it doesn't matter, like that could be your boy from your town, like he just wants to help out and he's just helping you push your music, and like that's an energy that you build, and then that brings somebody else in. And it's never the person. It's, if you're a rapper, like don't think about rapping in front of Jay-Z and Eminem. That's all Hollywood. Like if you're a producer, don't think about getting your beats to um just think of like Murder Beats or uh Sunny Digital or any of the producers that are hot right now, or like a little bit my era, like Timberland or Swiss Beats doing Beat Club, and just just be hot, and just get people that believe in you. Don't get caught up in like the branding of who somebody is or um, what their accomplishments are, what their standing is in the business, because that doesn't mean anything. Like you want to get connected with people that are on the same wave as you and believe in you. And I can guarantee you that's going to take you further than someone who's just like, um, like I said, in my experience, it was an A+ lister, and I learned a lot from it, and I don't regret it, but it wasn't the right path. And it may have set me back in some ways as a producer, thinking I was further along than I was.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess my question is, especially now, like, a big topic of conversation is like people even debating the necessity of managers or I mean, publishing deals, or I mean whatever, what have you, the whole labels, I guess in general. But like, do you still think that it's worth it for people to have like these managers and stuff? Like, how would a producer now even know if they need to be looking for one, or like what's your view on that?
So that's another great question. It's funny because I think that there's this kind of unraveling of the psychology of the music business that we're seeing happen in real time right now, as far as like what you need and what you need to succeed. And there, I don't think there are rules anymore. Like you have so many opportunities to access fan base and build a fan base yourself
Hmm.
without investing any money, just time and some creative energy. And whether it's social media or YouTube videos or whatever the case is, it's like, you know, you have so many things at your fingertips that you really only need to get involved with other people when you feel like it's taking away from your music. Like if you feel like I can't meet up with the demand of, let's just say you got a couple projects going on and you're finding yourself behind the eight ball because you're spending time doing social media promotion and whatever else, and the the music is starting to suffer because of that, then maybe you want to think about finding somebody who's going to help you um, get to where you want to go as far as the business side of your music. But there's a lot, kind of piggybacking on what you're saying. Like there's a lot of these like submit beats for $10 and get feedback. Here's an opportunity. We need beats and hooks for X, Y, and Z. And
Yeah.
you know, I I would never. I've done those before and regretted it every time. It was more of like, let me see how this is going to work type of thing. And like
Hmm.
my experience was like this is just a money grab. And it's like playing the lottery basically. Like you have a small chance of them actually not only like, okay, let's say they pick one of your beats and they give it to the artist who has to agree with it, right? So they're like, we like this beat. Is this artist going to like this beat? So now you went through two doors already. And let's say the artist does like the beat. Well, I can tell you that the majority of A-list artists or like higher streaming, um, higher plateaued artists, like they're gonna record probably a couple hundred records for an album, especially in trap music and hip hop. Like they're not they're not taking 3 years and recording 5 songs. Like they're taking 3 years and they're gonna record a couple hundred at least. So, even if the art loves your beat and then they're gonna take it, it doesn't mean it's gonna make the album.
Yeah.
So there's so many steps to go that route. And this is the same with having a manager or having like that connection to you, manager, publishing deal. It's all very similar stuff. And it usually ends up as like, as an illusion to your success. Like as far as the publishing deal goes, like you want that to come after you've already built something. So you already have something to cash in on.
Yeah.
Like if they think you're an up and comer, like if you're an up and comer, like don't mess around with the publisher. Like make sure you like because if you wait and you're patient, you're going to call the shots on your deal, on your splits, on retaining publishing, on your records. Like if you're an up and comer, they're going to try and take everything they can from you and kind of like say, hey, we're going to give you 50 G's up front or whatever, but the strings attached to that 50 G's like aren't going to be worth it. But if you're at a certain stage, like you're not going to see that.
Hmm.
So, it's almost like you want to get to for all those things you mentioned, you want to get to a point where you have to do it.
Yeah.
It's like I have to get a manager now because I need help.
Hmm.
The manager isn't going to get you. You might think, and they might tell you like, "Oh yeah, we'll get you in the studio, so and so and so and so." It's like it's all a big rat race. Like I personally would not do that unless I was in a position where like I need somebody to help me do this. Like I can't do this. I can't fly solo anymore.
Hmm.
So, I think the short answer there is like do it as long as you can on your own.
Yeah. Do you have a
And
manager right now?
no,
Okay.
um, I have like I have a few solid connections, and I have a few independent artists that I work with somewhat regularly, and um, I have access to it's a platform site called Sound which basically is like a work for hire site where people show up and if they have mixing or beat projects or whatever, they'll come to me. But it's kind of a closed ecosystem where they vet everyone that's in a certain circle. Like if you have to be credited as a producer, so you can't just sign up. Like you have to already establish yourself to be in that mix.
Oh.
So I just think right now for me, it's I have places I send music, thinking about the opportunity of maybe striking gold, but that's not the end game for me. That's just one of the facets of what I'm doing. A lot of I'm working on another sound kit now, so I've done some sound kits. It's like multiple revenue streams for me, and I think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Because you really want to have control of as much as you can.
Hmm.
And the more that you accomplish without somebody's help, like the more say you're going to have and how it goes down going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so you talked about, and I mean, if you don't want to talk about this, you don't have to, but like, do you feel like the breakdown that happened with the manager, do you feel like you could have saved that, or is it something that you didn't even want to save and like you're just happy that that part is over because you learned from it?
Uh, I I don't think it I don't think it could have been saved. I
Okay.
feel like like I said, she pulled a lot of cards for me and the other guy I was working with who was really more of a songwriter. I was doing the musical aspect of the production. He was writing.
Hmm.
Um, she pulled a lot of cards for us, and uh, it's hard to repay those favors. Like someone's going to believe in you, they're going to do those things, and I appreciated it, even more so now than I did then. I think at a certain point though, you have to. It's just a relationship that gets put in. It stalls, right? It's in neutral. It's like it's not really going anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, I think she felt like she was putting a lot of time in, and it wasn't progressing the way the time in wasn't manifesting the results that we all wanted.
Hmm.
And we had questions as to why. Um, and it's just a timing thing. I mean, I think, like I said, looking back on it now, I'm glad for that experience. But like, as far as like my production skills, like they're a million times better now than they were then.
Mm.
And I wouldn't, I wouldn't have the skill set I have now without that experience, but also having to recover from, it not working. Because that's what happens. Like you're in a situation, it doesn't work. And there's that period of like, it's like a breakup, like it's like the band broke up and you're like, damn, like what's my identity as a musician now?
Yeah.
Where do I fit in? It was a failure and why? And I don't think I don't think it was gonna go any other way. I think it was always kind of destined for what it ended up being. So I don't have any regrets or wish otherwise.
Okay. That right on. No, that's all super good information, especially about like the manager and stuff. Because yeah, that's always been something that's been confusing for me, and I think for a lot of producers too. And even like you were talking about the publishing deal, like just all that stuff. Knowing that you have your own leverage first, I think is super important. Nate wants to know, and I also want to know this. How did you even get into doing the international collaborations? I mean, you talk about you've worked with people from Italy. I think you said you're double platinum, and then also people from Japan. And like, how did that come about working with the international acts?
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Good question. Before I get into this, I do want to shout out the Graves firm, Lamont Graves. Like as far as like producer info, like everyone should follow him on Instagram. Like he drops gems every day
Okay.
about publishing, about management, about how to diversify your revenue streams. Like it's a gold mine. He also runs like some. Uh, he runs some like workshops on the weekends on what producers can get from releasing their own instrumental albums.
Hmm.
And he talks into sync placements, and like he's just a great resource for the stuff that we just talked about as far as information to empower yourself as a producer. So yeah, I would definitely check him out. Um, okay, so the international thing is interesting. The Italy thing actually that came from the Buchanans.
Oh, okay.
That was I think it was 2007 or 8. It was a rapper. His name was Fabri Fibra. Um, and I think you know he's a they're like he's the top of the pyramid for rappers in Italy. At least at the time he was. He's like very celebrated. Um, it was funny, like you do that record and like you hear him rapping on it, and it's weird. You don't really understand. Like I don't speak Italian, so he's like
Yeah.
rapping in Italian and like trying to figure out like what he's saying, and it's an experience. I mean, it's all the vibe though,
Hmm.
and definitely a talented dude. Um, so that one came through the group. Uh, the so Japan. I actually got someone reached out to me. There's a movie called The Fable, which is
Okay.
actually on Netflix now, but it was released. It was originally released in Japan, and they actually wanted me to write a record for a specific scene. I think they had when they had originally edited the movie, they had "Power" by Kanye in there, and
Oh,
I think they figured out like pretty quickly that it was going to cost them like a ridiculous amount of money to use it.
yeah.
So so they were like, "Look, we got a budget for X dollars. Can you write a record for us that has a similar energy?" And we could use like maybe 45, 50 seconds of that record in the movie. So I actually work with an artist who I collaborate with quite a bit, or used to collaborate quite a bit. Haven't heard from him in a minute, but that's Critical
Okay.
uh, of out of New York, and we wrote that record and then licensed it for the movie, which was fun because it. I don't know a lot about the Japanese film culture, like from where this was coming from. This is like a pretty big commercial release,
Yeah.
and lucky enough they had it in a film festival. There was a Japanese film festival back in, I think it was 2019 or 18, that was at the Lincoln Center in the city, and they were going to show that movie. So we were able to go to the showing and see it on the big screen, even though that was like the only time it was ever shown in the United States
Yeah.
on a screen was that one time. So that was an interesting experience, like dealing with people in Japan and uh, the the time differences and the cultural differences and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Slovakia was the same thing. There's a hip hop group called Contrafact that I guess is pretty legendary there. Like I'd never heard of them, obviously,
Hmm.
but uh, but they reached out and they'd heard something and was able to get a couple of beats for them for their newest project, which I don't think is out yet. Um, so yeah, like it to answer how that happens, like part of it's just networking and just getting your name out there and people, you never know who's looking at your page and who's going to come across a beat you post online. You never really know that. Like there isn't like one pipeline to getting it internationally.
Hmm.
Um, I think the name of the game is always to think big and think outside the box and realize that every country has like big hip hop stars and um, and just rappers like, it's obviously not as big in other countries as it is here, but there's always people looking for beats in other countries. And like you have access to them on Instagram and Twitter and your beat page on BeatStars or Traktrain or whatever. So um, it just be open minded to it and don't be afraid to reach out to a rapper from another like put that in your search engine, like in your mind, like, all right, I'm gonna start looking at rappers from Norway and like just find a couple rappers from Norway. Like, yo, you looking for beats? Like, I gotta say that there is like a validation if you come from the US.
Hmm.
So foreign artists feel like that validates their music a little bit more because
Okay.
they're all like making hip hop and it obviously is this it's born in this country and they're eager to make that connection with you. You just have to go find them. So I would say like it's more about kind of expanding your mindset and not thinking about the obvious placements that everyone's chasing after
Hmm.
here. Start thinking globally
Yeah.
and see what happens. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, even with like in the Latin American artists that are doing the hip hop and trap now too. I mean, they're doing like massive numbers. So, I mean, yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's something to think about for sure.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so you mentioned in your Track Train interview um, that this was fascinating to me. You said that Lupe came across your beat from a CD that you were handing out.
Well, it wasn't. It was a beat CD that he got of mine,
Okay.
and I'm pretty sure. So if you go on YouTube and look up "Fire" by Lupe, I sampled the Hendrix song.
Mm-hmm.
That was on there too. So he recorded two songs to that beat tape or beat CD or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the Jimi Hendrix sample was never going to clear. Like
Yeah.
there's no shot. And they just ended up throwing up on YouTube, which is a shame because they put it up on YouTube in like unfinished form. Like it was never really properly mixed. And there was like, as far as the arrangement goes, like I wasn't done with the beat. It was more like, this is an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, the track is ridiculous. Like his flow is stupid. Um, but I'm getting off course here. So
No, it's all good.
yeah, so yeah, he heard that in All Black, the beat for All Black Everything on the same tape.
Mm-hmm.
or CD, and it's kind of a crazy story. Like just from the hype of it, like he was hyping that beat up like before. Like if you're a Lupe fan, you'll know like his situation at Atlantic was dicey, especially after the Cool album. You
Yeah.
know, before Lasers came out, he had a lot of label problems,
Hmm.
and there was like this pushback of Lasers being too commercial for him and his fans, and like there was because it was a different sound. Like if you listen to his first two records, like Lasers definitely sounded a bit different.
Yeah.
It was a little more commercial. There was some more like R&B, like smoother jams on there. And
Hmm.
um, I think All Black Everything was when he heard that beat, it kind of bridged the gap of like doing something new, but it had the gritty boom bap drums and sound to it
Yeah.
that connected to his other two albums. So there was kind of a newness to it, and also for his fans like a familiar sound as far as the beat went. So he flipped out over it and hyped it up too much before we actually cleared the sample,
Oh
which,
man, that
which didn't go well when it was time to negotiate for the splits. Like the that person, like the Jimmy Durante's estate. I think it was his daughter. She was because he's obviously passed, but she was the one who handled the negotiation, and it wasn't. I don't have a problem name dropping them because I didn't like. They were like, we don't really like hip hop, but we'll take this percentage and this money, and we'll clear the sample anyway. So it was like, fuck you,
yeah.
for lack of restraint. There is like you're gonna act like you don't like the culture and you don't approve of this, but you have a price. And it was a steep one, and because like he had done so much hyping around it, he wasn't going to leave it off the album, but it killed any chance of it being a single
Yeah.
because the record company is never going to pay through the nose to clear a sample percentage wise and then throw that record on the radio because that like takes away from their bottom line. So it was one of those like, all right, he heard the beats and he's going to use them, and that's exciting. There's an excitement to that, and then going through the business process of it and the sample clearance process of it and the waiting. I mean, I think it might have been 2 years, but year and a half, not hearing anything,
Uh,
hearing that he's going to do it,
hmm.
not hearing about it, not hearing the song. Like, that's why I go back to making sure you have like, you're in control of your own stuff. You don't ever be waiting on people. And
Yeah.
the more you deal with that element of music business, you're going to wait. So that was my experience of like, all right, I need to find other ways to keep it moving while this is all going on.
Yeah.
And it was a good lesson to learn there as far as the process of getting, and that was a rough one because of the situation he was in with Atlantic. They weren't like jumping to put his album out.
Yeah.
So, there was a lot to learn there.
Yeah. That's man. That's frustrating. I feel like more producers need to know that, like, because I feel like I'm just barely figuring that out, and I wish I had known it before. It's like with the music business, like there's so much waiting on other people that like you say, you need to have your own stuff going on, because like otherwise, like you say, you're just sitting there like relying on someone else to do something, and it just
Right.
gets like stressful. I mean, depending on what your situation is, like
Oh
and
yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
yeah, I feel like
Well,
that's
I've learned that plenty of times, man.
yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, even doing sync work, like I've had just the red tape of doing a demo for like Fox, like it was like 6 weeks of red tape paperwork, and it's like, oh, we're gonna get to you next week. We're gonna get to you next week. You get tired of hearing that when you're hungry. You know what I mean? So it's like I think at some point in time, the biggest takeaway is like you want to be doing your own thing, and you want people to come to you
Yeah.
in your space, and those other things, like, they can happen, and, like, I'm not gonna discourage anybody from putting their energy into those things also, but just know what it is, and it's not what you think, you know? I
Yeah.
can't tell you, like, not just, the waiting part of it, if you know you got a record on an album, which can get delayed and who knows what else could happen, but, like, the idea of, like, them recording records and not using them, is such a gut punch. Like, you hear, like, someone took your record and they're gonna record to it, and then it doesn't you just don't hear anything, and then, like, some politics change or they end up scrapping the album and they start over, or, like, it's crazy. Like, you don't really understand that until you experience it or
Yeah.
someone tells you, but even if they tell you, it's hard to really get a feel for it until you see it in action. You're like, "Yo, that this artist was sure. He was telling me, like, yo, we're gonna drop this, like, in a month."
Hmm.
Like, they're positive, and then a lot changes in a month, especially in the music business.
Yeah.
And a month goes by, and you don't hear anything, and then you find out, like, "Oh, yeah, we scrapped that project, we started over. We love that beat, but it doesn't really fit what we're doing right now," you know? Or, like, you have a beat that you believe in, and these artists are, like, passing on it, and you don't understand why. How
Yeah.
many stories have you heard of, like, some ridiculous record that got passed on 5 times
Hmm. A
from
lot.
other
Yeah.
producers? Yeah, it's commonplace, they miss a lot.
Yeah.
So, on top of all this stuff, like, you don't wanna internalize any of it, which is really hard when you're dealing with art, right? Like, you're
Super.
thinking
Yeah.
yeah, you're thinking, this is my music, like, these people aren't they're not rocking with it, like, what am I doing wrong? And then you hear stories about how, like, uh, you know, I just saw an interview with Alchemist, like, a month ago where he's talking about "We Gonna Make It" was in the hands of Nas and Jay-Z and, Razkaz, and, like, there's a whole history to that song before Jadakiss took it with Styles and, like, did what they did with it.
Hmm.
And if that record was passed on, considering what it is now, it's like, how could anyone pass on that?
Yeah.
But that's what happens, and, like, you learn to take that with a grain of salt after a while and realize, like, again, the more you empower yourself, the less you have to deal with that shit.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick before we move on from it too much. So the Lupe thing with the whole like sample and everything, and he was hyping it up, and they got to take a big percentage, all that stuff. Do you think that it would have been, and maybe you have no way of knowing this, but like, do you feel like it would have been different maybe if he had been independent? Because you were saying that like they didn't want to push it as a single because it would hurt their bottom line, the record label. But like if we look at, for example, like Juice World with his song like All Girls Are the Same, and they sampled the song from Ghost, right? It was I'm pretty sure. I think that was what
Uh,
it was.
I know what you're talking about. I'm
Sting,
pretty
the Sting
yeah,
song.
the
And
Sting sample.
Sting ended up taking like 99%, like, or whatever. But they still put it out because they're like, well, this is a great song. People are going to love it. Like, whatever. Like, we're going to, still use the traction from all this and help us take off. Like, I mean, I know that Lupe was obviously like established and maybe it wouldn't have been that big a deal, but do you feel like could have been a different situation if Atlantic wasn't the one calling the shots on like which song was coming out?
It could have been. Yeah, I would say there's definitely an opportunity that, that would have went out differently. I mean, so I'm not sure about this, but I think in the Juice World situation that they put that record out and then Sting came after them because
Yeah.
they were like fully like I think they put it out and didn't they probably didn't realize that they might they might have thought it was hot, but it's hard to predict that type of like that was a smash.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Sting had so much leverage because they already had released it.
Hmm.
Um, so when it comes to independence, like you could do that. It's a dangerous game to play because if you do strike gold, they're just going to clean you up.
Yeah.
And it's this question of okay, let's just say uh, we sample this record and this song hits, and they're going to come after us after the fact. But we would have had the publicity, and the people already know this song, and we might not make any money off of it, but there's going to be opportunities to be gained after the fact as an independent artist, right? Like you could cash in on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying, I'm not telling somebody to go out and like put a record out that they haven't cleared.
Yeah.
Um, but because you can just upload things onto Spotify now, and they're not checking for sample clearances, right? So you go through whatever CD Baby or TuneCore or DistroKid, they're not going to ask you if you cleared the sample. That's all on your end. They're absolving themselves of any liability. So you can put music out on a huge platform without any clearance. Whereas back when record labels were doing it, the record label could get sued.
Mm-hmm.
So, not only you might, if you're some artist who doesn't have any money, what are they gonna take from you, right? I mean, they're gonna sue you for the royalties. They're gonna change the splits, right? They'll take your publishing. But if you're a record label, you put a record out without their consent or their clearance, and they can sue you for damages.
Yeah.
You got a whole big vault in the basement of your record company they can tap into and take a lot. So I hope that answers your question. Like
Yeah.
it could have been like if it was an independent and Lupe was like in a position where he wanted to put it out regardless and then deal with it later. Like yeah, that could have been a scenario. But in that case, he'd already went platinum. I think with both albums, or at least the Cool went platinum. I don't know if Food and Liquor went platinum. It might have later, but there was too much on the line to do something like that at that time.
Yeah.
So, it ended up costing the record exposure because, um, there was, like I said, there was talk of releasing it as a single. The single artwork, you can still find the artwork online that they had ready for it. They had a director lined up for the video. I don't want to say who because this is going to make me mad. Knowing, like, knowing the level of what they were planning, right? Like the
uh
idea of the song, like
yeah.
so. Yeah, different game now, though. I mean, a lot of these guys aren't clearing samples. A lot of these guys are just putting records out and then pressing straight to vinyl, and they're sampling obscure stuff, though. Some psych rock artist from Russia in 1975 is never going to know that you sampled their stuff. It's it's just not likely. So they're
Yeah.
playing the game now, and there's so much music out there. It's hard to
Mm-hmm.
track it all. But if it's a popular like breakbeat or like the Juicy Fruit breakbeat from Matumi that Biggie used for Juicy, like that drum loop, like you can't use that no matter what. You're
Yeah.
independent or not, they're gonna find you. So it depends on what you sample too.
Yeah, I think it was Kenny Beats that just recently tweeted something about like he's like, "Oh, when the label asks you, are there any samples on here?" and you're like, "Nope," and he like put a meme, where like obviously there's samples on it, but you just
Right,
lie about it. But
right. Yeah,
so yeah.
it's a it's an evolving game now.
Mhm.
Someone who's been burned by it a couple of times, like it sucks that to have that in your fingertips and have it taken away. I
Yeah.
get it. I get why some people hold their music closer to them than others, and it's really personal. And the
Mhm.
idea of sampling it to something else doesn't appeal to them, and that's their right to do it. I'm not going to say otherwise, but you got to remember the beginning stages of hip hop. Nobody gave a shit about like old Tribe records, Beastie Boy records, Far Side records. I mean, Jungle Brothers, like they're sampling 3 and 4 and 5 records in one song,
Yeah.
and no one asked for publishing, like, it was just a different and, it might be better, but when there's so much money on the line, like, you're just not gonna get that type of, uh, compliance with people, like, they're just gonna they see money, their attitude changes.
Yeah. For sure. Also one thing I want to point out that's super cool to me is that my very first hip hop show that I actually went to was when Lupe came to the Taco Bell Arena in Boise, Idaho, and he was
Oh,
playing
wow.
the Lasers album. That was what he
Oh,
was
that's
touring
crazy.
at the time. Yeah, I was
That's
like 15, I think.
nice.
And it was, so this is really weird, like kind of
Yeah,
full circle
there's a
thing.
connection there, man. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
super awesome. So getting into a little bit about like the, obviously that's the sample that, never was, or it was, but I guess it kind of messed up some stuff. So you said that it was really expensive. I think you even mentioned in the interview that you tried to remake it. Like, and I know that that's kind of a big thing that some producers do. Like, I know Justice League remakes samples a lot,
Hmm.
so that they don't have to clear them. And uh, like, someone else, I can't remember who else does it too, but um, has it like changed at all the way that you approach making your music? Like, has it kind of soured you on sampling, or have you tried to just manipulate stuff more, or like how has it affected you in that way?
Uh, it, Great question. I think for a while it did sour me on sampling, where I was like, forget it, man. I don't want to deal with it. Like, I'd rather just find ways around that,
Yeah.
not like legally, but like creatively, so I don't have to deal with the nonsense of it. Um, but it's at that time, this is around 2010, and I know Justice League had just kind of like changed the game instrumentation wise, like as far as production goes. Like, the Neptunes had their thing, but and there were the Neptunes were all it was all instrumentation. Like, they didn't sample anything. Like, the majority, just about everything he did was played on a keyboard. But it was like musically, it was really simple, right? And that was their brand. It was like very simple and it hit hard. There was genius in the chord progressions and the things they were doing, but it wasn't elaborate like arrangement wise, like what Justice League did with like Luxury Tax and some of the Rick Ross records in the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, so replaying a sample when we were at that stage, it wasn't a thing now. Like, now you go to a website that has sample libraries of people that just play records for other people. They're writing stuff for other people to sample, right?
Hmm.
Like, the game has changed in the sense that there's so many more talented musicians that are hip hop like centered, and grew up listening to hip hop and grew up listening to records that were sampled in hip hop, and now are like taking that and creating their own records for people to sample,
Yeah.
like specifically for that. So I think that has changed me a little, because I like musical elements, like, and I like it to sound a certain way. Like, you try and do certain things on a keyboard that you can't do if you have a live instrumentalist playing it. Um, Back then, it was like, let's try and do a string array. Like, this was an orchestra that was recorded for that song, and we're trying to recreate that with a couple keyboards, and
Yeah.
the string sounds just weren't there then. You could do it now. I could hire somebody to work
Hmm.
with, and we could recreate that sample with a different melody
Yeah.
and get the lo-fi sound and all that. But back then, like, there wasn't. It was like the frontier was just starting to open up sonically, like getting certain sounds, getting it to sound lo-fi, getting it to sound like it came from the 70s or whatever. Like, the recording industry has evolved so much, and the tools you have. So now it's like I'll sample whatever I feel like is good, like whatever connects with me. Whether if it's a record that I feel like will be a problem, I'll deal with it when I deal with it.
Okay.
Whether that's like getting some musicians to replay certain things and to recreate the sample, I'm confident I could do that with just about anything now, and capture pretty close to the same vibe.
Hmm.
But back then, it wasn't really an option. Like, it was kind of crude at that point. Like, it would sound okay, but the vibe wasn't there. You know, so kind of the answer here is like, yes, I'm not going to be discouraged for sampling anything, knowing that I have all these resources available to me to
Okay.
make it work regardless. Like, that's not going to get in my way anymore. When there was a time when it definitely did.
Okay. Have you heard of Tracklib at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that something that in your eyes is worth it? Because I mean, as far as I understand, like the licensing and stuff, is already all worked out on there, and you can sample all the stuff. Like, have you tried it at all, or?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I had a subscription for a few months, and I don't know like what it was particularly about it that it's always on my mind as a resource, but I didn't feel like I needed to be connected to it every month.
Oh, okay.
Like having it a monthly subscription, it was like because I find records elsewhere. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll go on YouTube and dig, and I have other stuff that I dig into. So um, I didn't really connect with it like some people do. But at the same time, like I know it's a resource and it's a good one to know that like, all right, when you get into it, this is what you're gonna have to pay to license it. This is the
Mm-hmm.
license fee, and then you know what the splits are gonna be. So there's no questions asked, as far as sampling goes.
Yeah.
I think for me, like personal taste, I'm really enjoying like finding sample libraries from people that are making stuff now because I feel like there's like a newer vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's kind of the wave that I've been on. But Tracklib is it's a great way to know what you're getting yourself into without any questions. Like you don't have to deal with the people who are on the other on the either in the group or part of the estate. You don't have to deal with them. It's already done. Like
Yeah.
so, I feel like it's a great resource for sampling older records for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah. So, do you still then have like a relationship at all with Lupe? Like, do you still like send stuff to his team, or what happened with that?
I don't have a direct relationship with him.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that kind of went away when I left the group. I think part of it was because, well, I wouldn't say any particular reason, but they had a close relationship with him. Um, they were involved in like First and 15th when it first started up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not sure if they knew him before he even started rapping, but it was, there was a relationship outside of music there to a degree. So I think naturally, like when I stepped away, like my connections, all the connections I had in that group, and there was a bunch of them, they all kind of went with it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure now, like if I met these people in person, if I could get their attention, like for me to get Lupe's attention now, I don't even know how I would do that because I'm not going to DM him. Like he's, you know what I mean? Like that's not going to happen. But
Yeah.
if I saw him in person, and that would be different.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a different situation than like trying to dig him up.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was part of the the fallout, I guess, of leaving that group was the connections that I had, and like I said, there was ones that I would pay I would pay money for now, like just to get their attention,
Yeah.
legends and like those guys were very well regarded in the hip hop community, um, so that opened a lot of doors for me,
Yeah.
and you know walking away was like okay, I'm on my own now. I kind of got to do this for myself,
Yeah.
which was tough.
Yeah. Why? So why did you end up walking away?
Um, I think it was a similar feeling that I had with my first manager where it was like the wheels are kind of spinning here.
Mm.
Um, we had spent, and this goes back to some of the stuff we talked about before, where it was like they had done records before I got there with Jay Z on the Black album. That was like their crowning achievement at that point. Was like that. It was what more can I say? Which was a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And then doing records with A. Marie. They had a record with Beyonce, and then when I linked up with them, like things started happening with Dr. Dre, um, Ti. These are these are opportunities you would dream of as a producer. They were in that space. So I think we got to the point of like, we don't want to wait anymore. Like kind of what we were saying before. Like we don't want to wait on these records to come out if they're going to come out. Like
Mhm.
you kind of feel empowered to do your own thing. So we started recording our own album, which was basically one of the guys in the group rapping and the rest of us handling production as well as him. And it was like it was a deep process. Like the records we were recording, it was like, it was emotional. Like this is the type of stuff that you record once in a lifetime,
Mhm.
as an artist. And, we're producing this, no, like seeing this artist kind of like flourish in front of us. And he had rapped before, like it wasn't like he just started, but um, we're building an album basically. And I think we must have recorded two or three, like 30, 35 records. Like we had a whole gang ready to release. And we had features from the biggest of fishes and the approval and the support of other producers and artists who, were just in awe of what we were doing. Like it was crazy. It was like you feel like you got the chronic basically, like what Dr. Dre had. Like you feel like you got that based on what you're being told from other producers and artists and A&Rs. Like we playing it for people and there's a lot of excitement around it. Um, we went on Static Selecta show, like I don't know what year this was. Um, maybe 2012, 13. I don't remember what year it was. We went on his show off and played some of the records, and like they're all, they were loving it.
Yeah.
It's funny. I got a little side story. This is probably something you're going to be familiar with. But I went on. This is my first and only experience going on the radio,
Mhm.
and I had the cans on, and you kind of go in mid show, and I'm like, I'm a little nervous. I've never been on the radio before. We're going to play records that we worked on. So it's, this is anxiety there.
Mhm.
Um, and I put the cans on and they were like crazy loud, like stupid loud. Like whoever was listening to those before me, like had to have been half deaf. Like it was like, so I put the cans on and they're crazy loud and the show's happening and I'm trying to get settled and like, I don't want to make a fool out of myself. So they get back from playing music, they start talking to us, and I'm like not doing anything other than sitting there. And there's like a couple of feedback hits in my mic, and I'm like, as a DJ, like you hear feedback, it's like the worst sound you could. That sound like hits you in the gut, like you hate feedback, like
Mhm.
so it's coming from me, and I'm like, you know, I'm not saying anything, I'm not doing anything, and Static like looks at me like, yo, he said something too. He might have said like, "Be careful of the feedback" or whatever. Like, and he's got his own demeanor, especially on his show. And
Mhm.
I'm not, I'm feeling like, well, I don't want to fuck this up, So,
Yeah.
so, uh, so I'm like, all right, I better just back up a little bit. So, I'm not even sure where it's coming from yet. And it happens again. He gives me like this death stare. Like I felt stupid. I was like, "Yo, what am I doing? Like
Yeah.
I'm not talking. I'm not doing anything." And after being on the show for maybe 10 minutes, they go into another play segment, and someone sitting next to me like points to the volume knob. Like everyone had their individual volume knobs, and this was turned up to the max. And I'm like, "That's what it was." Like it was the feedback coming from the headphones into the mic. So I turned it down and like, uh, I think that smoothed things over a bit, but I didn't like. No one told me anything. Like it was just
Yeah.
like one of those things. It was just like you feel like an idiot.
Oh my
Uh,
god. That definitely sounds like something that I would have
yeah,
done.
it's like fuck, man. But sure, like at the time, like I was wearing a New York Giants hat.
Mhm.
He's a Boston guy, so I don't know if like maybe
Mm.
he was salty about that too. I don't know, but it was funny. Like he was cool. We went to he had a spot later that he was DJing at. We went through there and chilled, and there was no problem or anything. But it was one of those experiences where you just kind of laugh out it after the fact. But
Yeah.
going back to the storyline here, like we played records on the radio that night, and the hype was starting to build like amongst the community of people that had heard it,
Hmm.
the producers. And I think at some point, like, and I don't want to speak for him because I never really like, I don't have an answer to this. It's just speculation that the artist, the person who was rapping, like maybe he just didn't want to go down that road of like releasing music and then what was going to come of it. Because
Mm.
as a producer is one thing, you're producing, people are going to know your name and maybe your face, but you're not going to take on the brunt of what's going to come your way if this music is what you think it is,
Right.
you know. And maybe, again, speculating, maybe he felt like that wasn't for him, like he didn't want that attention or lifestyle, because there's a lifestyle that comes with it,
Yeah.
it's a change. And for some people, like, you could be the most talented artist in the world, you just don't want the the trappings that come with it.
Hmm.
So that could have been it. I'm not really sure. Like I said, it's not really for me to say specifically what it was, but I just know the music never really got released. And that was like it was just a, it was just a, it was just a, it was just a downer,
Yeah.
like putting all that into something and then not seeing, it's not the reward of like fame or fortune, it's the actual release of it,
Hmm.
like
Just want to
if
hear
you
it.
yeah, you just want to get it out, and then you get that completion in your mind, like, all right, it's done, we put our time in, like we created this, now it's out of our hands, it's out for people to share. And um I think that just wore on me, and after a while I felt like I just wasn't feeling it. I was like, this, like, these guys have already done things that I would want to do production wise, like they have platinum status. They have, I don't think the Black Album won a Grammy, but they had a Grammy nomination before me. I think I'm not sure about that, but they had accomplishments that I wanted, and it was like if I'm going to get those, I have to step out on my own and do it on my own. I'm not gonna do it in this space.
Hmm.
So you know, it kind of got to the point of we're we're not, like, for me anyway, it felt like spinning wheels, and it was like, all right, I need to take a step back and think about this, because when you're in a group that long, it starts to feel like family. I mean, it's 7 years, 8 years. It's like this isn't going to be smooth. I step out of this, like I'm not just going to immediately transfer all my creative energy into a new. It's going to be like starting over. So I had to think about it and consider all that. And eventually, I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to take the leap. I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to see what happens. And
Hmm.
that's where I landed. Was just giving it a shot.
Yeah. Um, the Grammy nomination for Lupe's album. Did you like watch the Grammys that year because you were nominated and like hoping that you would win or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did watch.
okay.
You know, it's it's hard to, look, the Grammy, especially with hip hop, the Grammys have a checkered past to say the least,
Yeah.
like, and I always felt like it was kind of it was a stage prop for the Grammy Foundation.
Mm,
Um that they didn't want to deal with, but they had to because of the commercial success. Like they couldn't ignore it.
yeah.
And they did their best to make it feel that way, even though they were putting acts on. And so it wasn't like, I wouldn't say I definitely acknowledge those things, but there's still like this feeling of accomplishment getting to that point, especially like when you consider all the time and energy that you put in, the hard work. There's like any validation that you get is appreciated because of, and this, and all, the people that listen to this, like, producers put so much time and effort and energy into their craft. Any acknowledgement tastes like water, if you've been in the desert, like
Yeah.
You're gonna sum it up. You're just gonna, no matter where it comes from. And there was this feeling of, hey, this is an accomplishment. As much as I have mixed feelings about this whole thing, I'm still gonna enjoy the fact that there was an acknowledgement to the music that we made. And if they win, like, yeah, it's a great paperweight to have in my studio. Have the Grammy phone. It's like, okay, like, I'll
Yeah.
take it. Um, so I watched, and I wasn't disappointed. Like, it was, like I said, it was more of a, I have friends and family like, why didn't you go? It's like, fly all the like it's not what you think it is.
Yeah.
They don't understand that, but people who are around it understand. Like, it's not what you think it is, and it should never validate your work
Yeah.
as a whole. But you should always appreciate when people acknowledge your work. Like, you should never, even if it's someone you hate, like, hey, I'll take that. I appreciate that acknowledgement. You can separate the two things, right? I mean, you don't have to love this person if they tell you you made good music or whatever. Like, you don't need to mix those things all together.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was a great experience, and it's definitely opened doors. I mean, people see that as a tagline on my Instagram handle or on my, Sound Better page, and they see Grammy nominated. There's a cachet with that, and it does bring business in for sure, and I'm happy for that, definitely.
Yeah. That was one thing I did want to ask you about, the social media, especially because you said that, you've gotten some of these connections from having the social media and everything. And this is not a slight, like, by any means. Your social media, though, is smaller than, some of the other producers out there. Like, how do you have that balance then? Because I'm somebody who also, I really really hate doing the social media side of things. I know it's important and stuff, but how do you have that balance then with, like, people who are coming in and discovering you, but also at the same time, I mean, you're not in, like, the millions of followers and stuff.
Right, right. No, no, I don't have, like, my Instagram page is like, in fact, I have like a little bit of an issue having like a personal page and then my music page, and I basically post at this point just music stuff. So I have people that follow like my personal page, but it's just music there too. So it's not a clean thing for
Yeah.
sure. Um, it's tough because there's no organic way to gain followers these days. I mean, there is, but it's very slow and it's very deliberate. It takes a lot of energy, and this is why clout chasing is so become so popular and widely used, because people are looking for shortcuts to build their base.
Hmm.
And I just don't, that's just not a wise investment of my energy. I think, like, I feel like there might be a point in time where a record hits and it's like, oh, I see Soundmason produced, whatever record for J. Cole or whatever. And then they're going to start checking me out because of that. And then there's something to work with.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that to work with, like, it's just such a grind. Like, how many, it's such a toxic environment too, where people are like following and unfollowing, like this trick of like, they'll follow you and then send you a DM recommending another profile. It's such a
Yeah.
con. Everything's so inauthentic. It's, you know what I mean? Like, so in order
Hmm.
to really play the game, you have to be inauthentic. And I don't get anything out of that. So it's like, I agree with you 100%. It is an absolute necessity. That's why I have the page. It's like, okay, I have to have this. I have a Twitter page which has more followers, but I don't get a lot of interactions. I don't use it a lot.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's, again, like, so I don't know how many, I couldn't even tell you how many followers I have. It might be 100 or less. Yeah, but I put beats on the page that this artist found, and from like 2019, it hit me up earlier this year. It was like, yo, those beats still available. So you never know who's gonna, like I said before, you're never gonna know who finds your page. And like, I think it's more about, and I don't want to put anybody off, but there is like a bit of like ethereal thinking, and like, just control in your space and what you can control, and who comes across your music, and who um, who who might find it. Like I said, you never know. So just put it out there. Don't be so concerned about chasing and getting people to, because you're in a losing battle, because there are producers out there that are trash. Like I'm not gonna mince words. Like their stuff is garbage, but they know how to present their social media in a way where they have, you know 50,000, 100,000 subs on YouTube, and they're doing, their whole living is making production videos, but they never really learn production. Like they'll watch somebody else's instructional video and then recycle that for their own because they have an audience, right? About their presentation. So it's a hard it's a hard line to follow, especially if you're someone who has authenticity in their brand. Like, you don't want to come across as the guy who's like, "Hey, I can change your life and change your beats in 2 hours," and like, you don't want to be the salesman, because
Yeah.
then it feels like you don't have something to sell. Like the guy who's a hard seller, like, he doesn't have something to sell. Like, the guy who's got something to sell can just be like, "You can take this or leave it, but I know, like, if you don't take it, someone else is going to take it," right?
Yeah.
So, I think it's more about having a presence on those platforms, including the beat sites like Traktrain and BeatStars, and I know there are a couple others. Airbit, I think, is another one. Like, have a presence on all those, and then, like, just like a gardener, like, just water the plants every once in a while. Don't get consumed by it, because it's not gonna. If you focus on that as your means to level up, you're not gonna level up in a way that's sustainable. You're just gonna get to a certain place where you're gonna paint yourself in a corner, and then you're not gonna have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So, you just got to be patient, and you got to take a little bit of the pain. Like, yeah, there's some pain in the grind, and, like, you look at this, like I said, these clowns that are on these platforms, like, they're making a lot of money, and it can be frustrating, but you got to see through the lens a little bit and not be so caught up in that part of it, and realize that there's more to it than that.
Yeah. And you mentioned too the beat store, especially Traktrain. I mean, you had the interview with Traktrain about how you got your placement. That was how I actually even came across you and followed your Instagram and all that. But I noticed that your Traktrain's no longer up. Is there, like, can I ask why? What happened?
Oh, mine.
Yeah.
Um, it just got to the point where, well, I paid for it for a while,
Hmm.
and I just, like, nothing was coming my way. It was like, I don't have, for whatever reason, I don't have success with those platforms, and I think out of frustration of not getting anything going, it was like, all right, like, why do I have this up, if, especially because I wasn't tracking it, and I was like, I'd put beats up there, and I'd forget they were up, and it's like, all right, this is how I want to present myself now, considering I've done, this new batch, and they sound, to me, they sound better or whatever. And,
Hmm.
it was kind of this thing that, out of sight, out of mind. And I realized, if I wasn't going to give it my attention, I shouldn't have it up. So, I just felt like it wasn't like like, for whatever reason, my style wasn't fitting on their site, because there is a certain vibe to the beats there. And, like, for whatever reason, I wasn't gaining any traction. And it was like, at the time, it was like, okay, if I'm not going to get anything, uh, if nothing's going to click here, I don't want to leave it up and then forget about it, because
Hmm.
that happens to me sometimes.
Yeah.
So I took that down. I actually took down my BeatStars page too, but then I had somebody connect with me like a year ago, uh, from a record label that I had done instrumental albums
Hmm.
for sync licensing. This isn't even like record label stuff. This was record label, but they do sync licensing for movies and commercials. And he was like, we want to. They were starting to work with the people at BeatStars at the time, and they were like, "We want to get your page up and going." Um, I don't know exactly, like, I think this was the beginning of last year.
Okay.
Um, So I have a BeatStars page, but it's the same thing, and I'll probably take it down until I can figure out like how to make it work for me and not feel like I'm just like wasting my time. Um, and there's also this element of like, you go on there and people are people are charging their, $5, $10, like, five, here's 5 beats for $50. And so I can't compete with that. Like I'm not gonna offer prices like that and then have clients come to me and be like, hey, I'm looking for a beat, and be like, yeah, it's 500 for exclusive license, or 1,000, depending on what their situation is, or even more. It's hard to justify the pricing to those people if I have beats on one of those sites and it's like, yeah, you can lease this beat for $50. Like there's a marketing issue there for me also.
Okay, that
Does
makes
that,
sense.
that make sense? I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't like, because I have two loop kits with Traktrain, and I still have one of them on Splice. So they've been good to me. It's just like I wasn't connecting with the beat sale part of it. I
Hmm.
couldn't figure out like how to make it work for me and not take away from the other parts of my business.
Yeah. No, I had no idea that you had loop kits up on there. What are they called?
So one of them's called what did we call it? One of them's called Game Over, I think.
Okay.
I think one of them's called Game Over, and then one of them's I can't remember the name, but we used the Michael Myers scene from Halloween, where he's coming up to Jamie Lee Curtis with like the knife and the mask, like
Hmm.
or they're hugging or something. I don't know. It's one of these iconic Halloween moments that they use for the cover.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I have two kits on there. They're like really obscure. I did it because I'm like thinking about the track train sound, and like I feel like there was a sound to a lot of the stuff going on there. So the one has like a very synth, like John Carpenter type of vibe, and you can find that one on Splice. The other one, the Game Over one, similar, but like a little bit more trappy. But these are not typical sounds. Like you're not going to hear anything like this in another loop kit, which was kind of what I was going for.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so they're up
That's
there.
that's
Shout
super
out
cool.
to- yeah, yeah.
I
It's
might
a
uh I might have to go grab those actually because
Yeah,
those sound
man.
really interesting.
Yeah, man. Like you said, go hit them up. I'm also working on uh, a one shot kit. I just finished.
Oh, nice.
And this is all like it's all stuff I patches that I made on the OV6.
Hmm.
So it's all analog stuff. Um, but I didn't want to do a multi sample. It's too much work. So I just
Okay.
did one shots, like which is actually cool because when you put it in your sampler and you're going up and down the octaves, like the aliasing like actually has this particular vibe to it, like that fits with what's going on right now. So um, kind of excited to get that one off the ground. I'm not sure when I'll do it and how I'll release it. I might just do it through my Instagram page and like Twitter or something. I might just try and sell it that way. Not totally sure yet, but yeah, the sound kit, like that whole thing has become like a viable income, for anyone. Like
Hmm.
make a drum kit, make a one shot kit, like make a loop kit, like do those things. Like there's no reason. It helps your creativity. It helps you work on certain things. Like there's no reason not to.
Yeah, for sure. And then lastly, the last thing I want to talk about is I see that you use Bandcamp a lot. Bandcamp is something that I've I guess I mean I've always known about it, but I've been getting super into it, especially the last couple years, especially during the pandemic because they were just like I don't know, it felt like they were the ones that were kind of doing the most to help like artists and creatives and stuff who had their music and sounds on there to really because I mean they already have like the best I don't know what the right phrasing is, but like you get the most back from them as opposed to like the streaming other streaming services or whatever. So I know you have a few on there. Can you talk about having those like beat tapes up on Bandcamp and stuff and what that's been like?
Yeah, so I think that was just a product of having a lot of music that wasn't being released. You know, like sending beats out to people and and it just was like, okay, this goes back to what we talked about before about doing your own thing. It was like I want to release this music. It's also predominantly like that's my crate digger sound. Like
Hmm.
I'm gonna like make beats like that. Like I don't feel great about releasing it commercially just because none of it's cleared. And I just don't want to deal with that like clearance aspect of it. So Bandcamp is like the ultimate way to release that music in that format without worrying about the clearance aspect of it. So if you're a producer, um, you know, you can put remixes up there, you can do those things, and then if someone donates money to you or tips you or whatever you want to call it, like that's cool. Like it's not really the purpose of it. It's more of like a way of promoting, and then I found that I could use that when people contact me, like, "Yo, you got beats ready?" It's like I don't even necessarily need to put a folder together. It's like I have these links I could send to people, um, and they can listen to the beat tape. And sometimes that helps when I've done because a bunch of them have remixes on it,
Mm.
and sometimes it helps an artist to kind of get the vision when they hear somebody else's voice on it. You keep sending them beats and beats and beats, and like they're they're listening to the beat, but sometimes you want them to hear what it's going to sound like with a vocal.
Hmm.
Is they'll think something's missing or like the beat clicks or hits differently when there's a vocal on it.
Yeah.
So it was my way of like feeling like showcasing some production skills by using acapellas that I get.
Hmm.
Uh, it kind of sucks in the way that the acapellas are. I guess people are using like the uh, isotope. Um, I forget the name of the. There's a program that basically strips vocals out that they have, and you can strip instrumentals out too. I forget. It's like it's an isotope program. So
Okay.
when you listen to the acapellas, they weren't studio acapellas. Most of them, it's stuff that somebody ran through this program, so they sound a little grainy and warped.
Hmm.
Um, so me being picky, like sonically, like I don't love that aspect of it, but like
Yeah.
I've had beat sales and connected with artists because of those tapes.
Hmm.
Um, and it was never really intended for that. It was more like a purely creative outlet for me. It was like I just want to put these out. I want to share them with people. Like I just want to get this out. And if somebody wants one of these beats, we could always arrange that. Like it's not like it's a done deal that it's been released. Like
Yeah.
and I just think it's more of a creative vibe on Bandcamp than Spotify, Apple Music, and all like that's all. It's all very commercial.
Hmm.
The vibe is very commercial, and Bandcamp is more like music centric, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I felt more comfortable like putting those tapes out on there, and you know, it's something that I feel like as time goes on, people are gonna will go back to or will like discover. Like
Hmm.
right, you have that stuff for people to find. It's like they find one thing or they hear you did one thing and then the trail of breadcrumbs to go back. Like, oh, they have all this too, and that's where you build an organic fan base.
Yeah.
Start with your stuff like that. So it's kind of a foundation piece for me.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. It looks like we have another question from Nate. Wants to
Nate,
know
what's up?
if you've ever not been confident in your craft, and then if so, how did you overcome it?
Uh, I feel like yeah, absolutely. There has been periods where I mean, even like moments of doubt recently. I would say like it comes and goes. Like you can
Yeah.
I guess the confidence is part of the foundation that builds you up when you might be feeling a little bit off. Um, but yeah, you're always going to have those moments or longer periods of time. Like when I was first starting out, I think I was very confident in myself and my ability to do it, but I was missing like I wasn't hearing things it was like I knew I could do it. I believed in myself. But when I'm playing music for other people and they'd come back and be like, "Yeah, but your drums aren't hitting," or whatever, like those moments definitely made me question myself, and then it kind of brought out my insecurities as a producer. Right? It's like, you could be confident in one thing in life, but then you step into another arena and you're not confident at all because it's new or because you haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
So there's definitely that, like, it's it's definitely a process. Like it's a building process. You're not going to have it overnight. No
Hmm.
one does, and it's never going to go away. Like, you're never going to be so like I could tell you that you name the producer and they're going to admit that they have periods of not feeling confident about what they've done
Yeah.
or what they're doing. Um, it's not a matter of overcoming it as much as it is like learning to deal with it and like accepting that that's human nature, right? Like athletes go in slumps, right? Like
Hmm.
no one performs at the same level all the time, and there's those moments of like, do I still have it? Um, so it's not. I wouldn't use the word overcome. I would use the word of like accepting that that's a reality, in especially as a creator, and and conditioning yourself and learning how to process it when it does show up.
Hmm.
That's just like taking time for yourself. Like, you're feeling like, you're whatever you're working on isn't hitting the way you want, or it doesn't sound the way you want. You may be taking that personally, or somebody says something to you um, that might hit a nerve. I mean, I would say people would say, "Don't care about what other people think." Like, I would agree with that, but sometimes like you can't help that,
Yeah.
right? Someone says it the right way or hits the nerve, and you're like, "Fuck, that really, that stings."
Yeah.
So it's more of like, what are your tools to process it when it does show up? Take a step back. Don't do music for a little while. Take time to remind yourself, like almost talk yourself up. Like, you were just doing this. Like, look what people were just saying like a week ago. This artist like feels like you changed his life with that beat. Like, remind yourself of these things. Like, take a different perspective. Like, give yourself the space to kind of step out of that trauma or that feeling of, damn, like, because it's not real. And once you train yourself to learn that it's not real, that's not how you really think, that it's just a moment in time or just a little spot that you have to get over, then it becomes easier. You're just like, all right, I remember this. I remember what it feels like to doubt myself, and all right, I know how to deal with this now. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just getting outside for a day or two and forgetting about it and coming back and being like, yo, this is easier than I remember it. Like, so I think it just comes down to the processing of it and like accepting that, like, yeah, this isn't going away.
Yeah.
We all get it, and learn to take it lighter and to just like enjoy it as part of the process. Cause I always tell myself, like, all right, I know that I might be feeling this way now, but I know when this passes through, like, things are going to hit a little bit harder on the other side of this.
Yeah. For sure. No, that's that's all really good. Really good advice. I don't want to take up any more of your time. This is already gone on longer than I think most of my
Yeah.
podcasts, which is great. I mean, this was just full of information. So what is coming up on the horizon for you? Like, what do you got coming out soon? What are you working on? Just so people know what to be on the lookout for.
All right. So, first of all, thank you for having me on your pod. This has been a lot of fun. I love talking about this stuff, and this whole last couple of years, I think everyone's been putting on a little bit of an island. So to connect with people uh, in this way is definitely appreciated, and I appreciate you having me on.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, no problem. Thanks.
I definitely enjoyed talking and looking at the time now. I'm like, damn, that is a long. But, I enjoyed it. You asked great questions, and I
Thank you.
think you have a great feel for the just for the game, I mean, the questions that you ask tell me you know what's going on. Like you have a feel for it. You have a feel for the the game as it's played now. I don't like using the word industry because we're past that now. Like it's kind
Hmm.
of dead. This is a new game.
Yeah.
You have a feel for it, and your reflection, your questions reflect that. So I appreciate that and appreciate you having me on.
I That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, man, no doubt. So what's coming up? I have a few independent artists I'm working with that have records in the works. Um, I want to shout out Genre for some reason. Like, if you guys haven't heard of him, definitely check him out. He's from the Bay Area. Super talented artist. Um, he's uh, he's working on a few things now. I know I got one in the can with him that we finished up that we might put out. Um, but yeah, besides him, like just a couple other artists I'm working with. Um, I always promote that stuff as it comes out. It's kind of hard being a producer. I don't want to talk about stuff that's not out yet because
Hmm.
it's on them to put it out and to promote
Yeah.
it. I don't want to get ahead of the game. Um, I'll continue to put stuff on the Bandcamp page. I'll probably drop a beat tape here in the next month or so. Um, Definitely putting out the one shot sound kit. Probably that'll probably be in the next couple of weeks.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
there's a couple sync placements that happened. Um, I don't really get to promote those because I find out when I get the paperwork like that
Yeah.
they happen, and it's like I'm kind of like scrambling to find them.
Hmm.
So a lot of what's coming up for me is just like stuff that's in the process. I don't really have like a whole lot of releases that are set in stone right now. Um, Everything's kind of moving quickly at the moment, so yeah, just I would just say just keep tabs on my Instagram page, the Soundmason, um, Soundmason at Twitter. Like I'll keep people, people are interested. I'll definitely keep people in the loop as far as releases go. Um, yeah, and maybe some big surprises in the middle of the year. We'll have to see.
Nice. Awesome. Well, yeah, I want to say thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. A ton of, I think, information in here for people to get through. And yeah, it was really cool to hear. Because I mean, again, I don't, I don't, I don't know why I'm worried about like offending you with this or anything, but I think that you are like the um probably the most experienced person that I've had on the podcast yet. And so
Right,
it's crazy to hear like, how it was versus then and then, all the way to now.
right.
I think that was super informative and helpful
Yeah,
with how the things have evolved and changed.
yeah, man. No, it's. I mean, I feel very fortunate to have experienced all of that because it kind of shapes how I produce now.
Hmm.
To have gone from like doing it on a Triton, working on like an Electribe, a Korg Electribe drum machine, like going from that, trying to sequence all those things together to working like basically making all my beats on a laptop.
Yeah.
Um, there's a certain seasoning that comes with that I know a lot of people don't have, and I feel fortunate to have been around all that because it does make me more well-rounded. But it doesn't, I wouldn't say necessarily an advantage, but it definitely is a gift in certain ways. So, never worry to offend me, man. I'm cool as a breeze, bro. You can say whatever. It's all good.
All
I
right.
know like, it's kind of interesting dynamic because, um, I've seen videos of kids 12 years old making beats now. So like the age group is so, I mean, I think Timberland's got to be 50, or close to 50. Like, so
Yeah.
we're talking about like such a wide age group now
Hmm.
and so many different levels of experience. And like, everyone has their place in it, which is interesting because you've never seen this in music before.
Yeah.
You've never seen like a genre of music embrace that wide of an age group. And it's only going to keep growing because like the technology available to make beats is like you don't have to you could do everything. You could be 70 years old and do this. Like
Yeah.
so, you know, I appreciate it, and I'll laugh at it too. Like I know I've been at it for a while, a little longer. It's all good, man.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on. And I'll be on the lookout for the one shot kit and the B tape and all that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. Again, like thank you so much. I'm sure we're going to be in touch. Um, feel free to hit me up whenever if you got questions or, you know, like I said before, I definitely want to emphasize like if you're a producer and you have questions about business related stuff, like follow Lamont Graves on Instagram. He will change your life with his info. Like I guarantee it.
Yeah.
So, just to all the producers out there, just do your thing. Don't worry about where you're from. Don't worry about how many people are in your town. Just enjoy it and put yourself out there. Like the opportunities will always come if you put yourself out there, but they won't show up if no one knows that you're out there. So just put your music out. There's plenty of platforms to do it. So there's no excuse for being in a small town. Like just rock out and put it out there and don't be afraid to put it out there and don't think it's not good enough. Because I know I made that mistake of holding stuff in and not putting
Hmm.
it out. Like just put it out, put
Yeah.
it out, put it out. Just keep flooding it and it'll happen.
Yeah. That's great advice. All right, man. I'll let you go. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you again. Appreciate it. We'll be in touch for sure.
All right.
And I hope things come your way, man. I think they will.
Thanks.
I think you got a good thing going here, and I checked out your production as well, and you got an ear for the beats, man. So just keep at it,
Thank
and
you.
it'll
Thank
all
you.
come together.
No, that means a lot for real. So
Yeah,
appreciate
man.
it. All right. You have a good night, man.
Blessings, brother. Peace.
See ya.